Welcome back everybody to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I thought I would make a video today on a machine that I'm getting ready to start the overhaul process on. And you saw this machine briefly when I was doing the video on Singer logos and the beautiful medallion-like emblems that Singer used over the years. And of course, I used this machine as an example to show you what the Centennial Singer badge looked like. And I haven't started the overhaul process on this model yet. Of course, it is a 201 Centennial, but I wanted to, I thought I would start maybe making on occasion, I can make videos of machines that I pick up. You get to see them at the beginning when I first get them, and then of course I'll make another video when it's time to list this machine to find a future client. Now, a lot of times people will describe machines as being in good condition, or they have all kinds of ways of describing them. This machine is an unusual find. I have only come across, in it's almost 9 years now of doing these sewing machine restorations in this hobby of mine. I've only ever come across just a few machines that were literally almost perfect, and I mean that aesthetically. In other words, the machine was in such gorgeous shape that if you saw it in a store, you might think it was ready to sew on. And that brings up another topic I wanted to discuss, which is, if a machine looks beautiful, does that mean it doesn't need a full overhaul and restoration? And I would suggest to you that no, all machines of this vintage need a full overhaul and restoration. But I thought that this might be kind of interesting to show all of you here on the channel, because I have gotten just a handful of machines that truly were almost in mint condition, 99% what they were when they left the factory. And a large part of that is due to the way the original owners cared for them. And some of these machines stayed in the same family for so long that the original owner, their influence was imparted on the machine in terms of how it was cared for. So a little background on this particular 201. I found this one listed. It was listed online, and it was part of an estate sale. And the children of the original owner were, they were just basically clearing out the house. And this is one of the items that was for sale. And so I went over to see it and got over there and walked down into this little room inside the house where it had been. And I asked the people who were selling it, how long it had been here. And they said that their parents had moved into that house in 1960, and that this machine is a 1950, early 50s model. So it's very possible that the machine originally was purchased, and it may have been in a different house or an apartment perhaps, but this of course found its way with the owners to their house that they purchased in 1960, and this machine was inside that house in climate control comfort with the original property from 1960 until just a few months ago when I got it. I'm just now getting around to restoring it. So imagine that a vintage sewing machine in the same home, always in climate control comfort, as I like to say, for essentially 60 years, almost 60 years. And the owner, of course, the original owner, knew how much it costs and how they took care of it. And I'm going to show you the machine, but before I do, I wanted to actually pan downward and show you something else that you almost never see. Now, what you're looking at here is the original sewing stool that came with this machine, because when the owner purchased this machine, they bought the machine and it would have come in a case, but they paid extra for the table, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. But of course, the table, they also got the little stool here. Now, these stools were covered in a type of fabric, and I'm not clear exactly on how the fabric was made. It is some sort of woven fabric, and I have a feeling that it may be a heavy canvas or cotton, and then it was coated with some sort of coating to make it, wear-proof and spill-proof, etc. But this is the original seat. Now, very often when you see these, there are going to be splits and cracks in the top of it. And that happens to any piece of furniture over time. And if you've ever had anything that was covered, even if it was in vinyl or leather, upholstery fabric, it has a rough life. It has to perform, and eventually they have to be recovered. But this one doesn't. It is the original covering. And I'm going to show this to you. This is, you'll see the back of it, where again, this is how it was produced. And this is solid wood framing, and this is masonite, which was very common as a panel material. And when you look at it, you can see the fibers. Some of you who are my viewers may know more details on this, but I'm pretty sure this is some sort of heavy, because of the year, we don't see a lot of synthetic fibers in the early 50s. We would see them later in the 60s, but I believe this is a heavy duck cloth, some sort of canvas, and likely cotton, and then it was coated with some sort of coating. But look at the condition of it. And when you look at this little bench, now you will see on the corners, you can see where the coating is not there, and I don't think it's worn. I think when this fabric was stretched over the frame and installed as a piece of upholstery, it was stretched, and over time the coating itself would lose a little bit of its elasticity, and that's why you're seeing this. Because if this was worn from someone using it, this is not really the wear place. It's usually right here where you put your butt. And just, the weight of people using it over the years, that happens with upholstery. But other than these little edges, and again, they're not even worn, it's just where the coating pulled away from the fabric. But I have never seen, in the 9 years, a seat that was perfect. And I think this is about as close to perfect as you can get. It even still has plenty of padding. Just a beautiful, it's kind of silly sometimes to think, oh my gosh, I'm going to sit here and talk about the upholstery on a sewing stool. But what I'm really getting at here is not just the quality of the manufacturing of this piece, but the fact that it was so well cared for. I mean, it just is, that is unusual. The vintage sewing machines, by and large, most of them are not rare. But having a machine that is in this kind of condition, that's pretty unusual. And anyway, I'm going to move the camera and I'll show you some of the rest of the machine. Before I do, though, let me go back to the stool, because in the little storage area of the stool, you will see lots of, these are sewing notions. Whenever you're looking at a machine, as I mentioned before, always ask the people selling the machine if there were any sewing supplies. Okay, don't necessarily use the word notions, because a lot of people don't know what you mean. Sewing notions, that's a term that some sewers know what that is. But ask them, were there any accessories, sewing stuff that went with it? Well, with this machine, you will see quite a bit. You will see the original 201 Singer manual. And again, you can get PDFs of these manuals online, no big deal. With Singers, they're free. You don't even have to pay for them. And you can go on Etsy and eBay and places and get the original hard copies. But this manual is something else. If you look at this, it literally looks like we went back in time to 1951, 52, and we just got home with our new machine. I mean, this thing, look at it. There's no creases, there's no cracks, it's not torn, it's not even faded. It's probably been sitting in this little notions or accessories bench all of its life. So it's been kind of in a sealed chamber, if you will, and just a beautiful piece. And of course it came with, this is something that would have been original. It's like a screwdriver that was used. And there's another screwdriver. There's even a package of vintage Singer needles. Now, you might say, well, who cares? It's just a bunch of old needles. But these needles say made in Germany. So they've been in here a long time, because Singer needles have not been made in Germany in a generation or two. Let's just put it that way. And there's some other things in here, some newer Singer needles, and nothing wrong with new Singer needles at all. And then, of course, there is an accessory box that's in gorgeous shape. And I'm not going to go through these. These are fairly common. You'll see a tucker, edger foot, ruffler foot, gathering foot, what you often see with Singer machines. And again, as I mentioned in the past, the sewing feet and accessories that came with these machines were often, they were sold because they reflected the fashion trends, right? People used to make lots of ruffles, and so having a ruffler was very useful. But anyway, I just wanted to show you, this again is part of this little time capsule of the Singer 201. The fact that it's a centennial, that's just like that's a bonus. But even if it wasn't a centennial, I would have wanted this machine because of how they took care of it, the original owners. And now let's take a little closer look at the machine and the table itself. Okay, I've moved the camera in position, and you can see this is, of course, I have opened up the table. This is probably one of the more common tables you will see. I don't remember the exact name of it, and again, it would have been pretty darn expensive when this machine was purchased. The person who bought it would have been offered a case and then offered to upgrade to a table, and there were many sizes. You folks saw a much larger table with a Singer 201 in it, which has since found a new home. But this one was selected, and they chose mahogany, so they would have paid even extra because mahogany would have cost, even in the early 50s, mahogany would have been a little more expensive than the maple, which is perfectly fine, or walnut, or any of the others. You had quite a few choices. Now, of course, you have the opening in the front here. We've got several vintage Class 66 bobbins, which are just beautifully made. You guys have heard me geek out on bobbin quality before, so. And what I will do, because this table is in such incredible shape, I'm going to, I will be going and sort of reconditioning it with my restore, finish, and feed wax technique, and I'll explain why when we look at the machine. Now you can see this beautiful 201 opened up. This particular one has the scroll work design on the back plate, on the side plate. Some people really care about that. People are very funny when they start collecting machines. This is a very popular machine amongst quilters. And let's see, as I was looking at the machine, of course, it has a beautiful supple power cord. At some point, the prior owner had it rewired. I can tell this because of the style of the cord, but they used the original plug and the cord receptacle plug here, just in beautiful shape. And again, I have bought 201s. I love them so much. They are such magnificent machines. I once bought a 201 that had been sitting in a garage for 20 years. It was covered in dust and grime. Golly, made a mess when I was trying to clean it up, but I vacuumed it up and got it going. And that machine had some scratches in it. It wasn't perfect. But that's okay. 201s are such incredible machines. People want them. And that brings up the next thing I wanted to mention, which is, how do you know how much restoration or overhaul work a vintage machine might need? And the answer that I always give people is that every vintage machine, unless you've had it worked on and you're using it and it's running fine, unless you know the whole history of that machine, every vintage machine deserves to have a full overhaul or restoration. Either you can find someone that does that work, whether it's me or another person, or maybe you decide to do it yourself. Regardless, it's something that needs to be done to the machines. They were designed, I've shown all of you in many of my videos, all these wonderful access places where so many things were designed to come apart, to give you access, or to give a service person access, so you can take care of them. And these machines are all like that. And it can be a little misleading if you ever see a sewing machine and you see, oh my gosh, that thing's got scratches, it's dirty, it's got bad cords, it's going to need a lot of work. And you assume that, well, that's going to take a lot of time. But then you might see one like this, you think, oh, it's fantastic. It's in mint condition. I should be able to just put some oil in it and start sewing. Well, you might, but I wouldn't do that. And again, what that means is, for example, this one, you are looking at a mint condition sewing machine from the early 50s, but it's mint in its aesthetics, okay? And it will sell for more than the last 201 that I restored, which sold for somewhere around $200. But again, that machine I went through the whole machine, and I normally, because I have to spend so much time on 201s to get them restored, I normally charge more. This machine will sell for more because of its aesthetics. Some people care about aesthetics and some don't. But this one is so beautifully preserved, again, being in the same home for 60 years, and it had the original owner for 70 years until the owner passed away. So if you ever see a sewing machine that looks as beautiful as this one does, and you buy it that way, you still want to give it that attention, because remember, the mechanicals of the machine, they still need to be serviced. The fact that it was given basically a nice cushy life, this machine was very well cared for. So cleaning the machine will not take as much time, but again, I'm going to service the motor. I'm going to go in and make sure everything has been cleaned, and then the old lubricants are taken off, new lubrication is provided. I'm going to go and make adjustments throughout the machine, and then of course do the test sewing. So that, I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but everything that I did to the last 201, which had a lot of hours of labor on my part in order to get it ready to sew again, I'm actually going to spend almost, if not the same amount of time with this one, but again, it's because of the mechanicals. Cleaning this machine won't take as long because it wasn't even dirty when I got it, which is just amazing. So what does mint condition mean for a vintage machine? If it's mint, and if it looks mint in terms of its aesthetics, that's great, good for you. But don't assume that it doesn't need maintenance. Once it has had that maintenance, then again, I always want to mention to anyone who's looking to purchase a vintage machine, I always try to take great pains to remind all of you that all of the work that you see me talking about in terms of restoring and overhauling any of these vintage sewing machines, that is the work that is done for the overhaul. That is not normal maintenance. Your normal maintenance is something you can even see. There's a little hole here and it has oil. The others don't, but there are oiling points on the machine. All you have to do is keep your feed dogs clean of lint and oil the machine before every project. That's all you should have to do. It's either you're going to have someone like myself overhaul it and do all of that basically, overdue maintenance for the machine, or you may choose to do it yourself, and that's one of the reasons I make all these videos on how to overhaul sewing machines. But again, sometimes you can see a machine that looks gorgeous. Don't assume that it doesn't need the overhaul. It deserves it. And if you, let's say you plug it in and you start sewing, you think, wow, but this makes a great stitch. That guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Just put some oil in it and leave it be. Well, you know what? Once you have gone through a machine or you've had it serviced and it has gotten all the maintenance it needs, you will see a difference. It's like night and day. If you think these machines sew beautifully in this condition, and I went to do a little testing just to see what it was doing as a part of my diagnostic process, it's incredible when you're finished, because I just overhauled a Singer 301A in black. And yeah, it sewed a stitch and it was a decent stitch, but once I finished overhauling it, it's like, it sews like butter. It's so much better, and the machine is able to really excel at what it was designed to do, because it's now been maintained the way the original engineers intended. So again, you don't really know what you have until you've actually rejuvenated the machine. And you, like I say, if you think you have a great vintage machine, you might want to consider, like I say, having it overhauled or or restored or reconditioned, whatever word you want to use. And you may be surprised at just how even better it performs, because it's been given what it was designed to have, which is maintenance in all of the areas that that are required. So there you go, guys. This is the Singer 201 Centennial that you saw in my little badge video, and I will be taking it through its overhaul, and then I will make another video when it's time to show it off and show it in all of its 201 glory, and then we will then, once I'm finished, I'll then start getting it posted online for a new owner, because I don't collect machines. I don't, I only have one or two of my own, and I'm trying to decide now one of the machines I have in my inventory if I'm going to keep it for myself for a while or not. But it won't be the 201. People often say, why don't you get one of those Centennial 201s for yourself, because you have access to them. The fact is, I don't need a 201, but many of my clients do. Clients who are very particular about stitch aesthetics, garment sewers, people who sew fine gowns, wedding gowns, or quilters. They really, really, embrace the beauty of the stitches of the 201s, the 301s, and the featherweights. Those of you who have these machines already know what I'm speaking of, but again, most vintage sewing machines, they all sew great stitches and really good solid stitches. And for me, you know, I just mend clothes. That's really all I do. I'm not a fine sewer, and so I don't need a 201. But I have clients who do, and I've tried to hold on to a 201 for myself before. But when I ran out of inventory, I had someone come to me and say, "Hey, I really want one of your 201s," and I ended up selling it. So finding them new homes is the most satisfactory thing of all, because these machines were designed to work. And there are plenty of museums that have a lot of great examples of these machines, but I want them to do what they were intended to do, and they are always better cared for when they're used, when people sew with them. And it also helps people enjoy sewing. And it's hard to do that with a little cheap plastic machine that won't even go through medium weight fabrics. So there you go, folks. Stay tuned. Once I finish with this, I'll be getting it posted, and I'll make a what I call a debut video when the machine's ready, and then we'll find it a new owner. Thanks for watching, everyone.